Hey folks, Professor Fiore here. I've got a short but kind of cool video for you today. It's on a little known feature of the Tina TI simulator, and that is its ability to use completely arbitrary sources. Now, it does have a piecewise linear source and a user-defined source, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something completely arbitrary. So let's go over to a very simple circuit. I've just got a diode and a resistor and a source. Now, normally when you pop up a source, right, you would say, okay, give me, let's say a voltage source, right? And you would double click on this. Up comes the dialog. And you can set a DC level if you want. What kind of waveform is it, right? And this is where I go. I say, hey, let me use a sine wave, right? Set the amplitude, set the frequency, set the phase. You know, I want a cosine, I want a square wave, a triangle, whatever the heck it is. But as good as those are, and they will certainly take you the vast majority of the time, right? For the vast majority of your work, that's going to be just what you want, typically a sine wave. But sometimes, just sometimes, you want to use a different kind of waveform. In other words, a waveform that's very specific to your application. Maybe it's something you pulled off of, maybe a temperature probe, a pressure sensor, something like that. And you want to use this real live waveform as your input for your circuit. One possibility, if you're doing, let's say, audio, would be to pull out a waveform of someone speaking, or some music, or an individual instrument. All you really need is a wave file. So however you want to get that, right? There's a ton of applications. For example, you could use my sample wrench editor, and you could create waveforms that way, and then simply export that wave file, save it somewhere, and then you go and select it. So I've already done that with this one, right? You'll notice when I open this up, it says signal is wave file. And I will go in here a little deeper and show you the little dialog, right? So it's this very last icon, this kind of funky looking wave thing going up and down. And you would just click on load wave file, navigate to where you want. It's a standard file chooser thing. Grab that waveform, and then you can set it up in terms of, is it mono? If it's stereo, you can choose left and right. You can choose to repeat the waveform. You can set up the scaling, the max scaling, right? Because Tina doesn't know necessarily what your waveform maximum amplitude is. A wave file doesn't have that embedded in it. It just has a bunch of digital words. You can preview it. If you got a bunch of wave files and you're not really sure, you can preview it. So I've got this little voice waveform in here right now. I'll just hit this. It's like a little tape control kind of thing here.
Put that thing away.
Right? So put that thing away. Now, that's what I'm going to use. That's my input waveform. So what do you expect is going to happen? I scaled this to 1 volt. Now, a large portion, the majority of the signal, is actually going to get clipped by this diode. All the negative portion is going to be gone. And about 70% of the positive portion is going to be gone, right? Because you got to turn the diode on. And what's left is going to drop across R1. So you could use something like this to check out the way in which an amplifier clips. Maybe you're working on, an amplifier that does soft clipping, let's say, and you want to see how it really responds to a true audio signal. You could take a little recording of like, a guitar or a bass or something like that and run it through and actually look at it. So I'm just going to run a transient analysis over here. And I'm going to use 1 second of that. It doesn't have to use the entire wave file. That wave file is a little bit longer than a second. I'm just going to use the first second. Boom. So here it is. Now, here's my legend over here. So V out is the maroon, and then the arbitrary input, the green, is the input, right? This is the wave file, okay? This big green thing over here. And then the red is what we got out of it. So it might be a little bit easier to see when I separate the curves. So this is the input. Notice how it scaled this. It found the maximum value, the biggest peak here, boom, and it set that to 1 volt, okay? So again, the diode simply gets rid of all the negative part, and it gets rid of essentially, you know, from about this point, right? You got to turn the diode on. So basically everything below what I'm doing here is going to be gone. So we just see the peaks, right? Of course, the scaling over here is a little bit different, but that's the way it works, right? Of course, you can zero in on this waveform and do all the kinds of things you would normally do in Tina, but now you have this very unique kind of waveform, okay? Really cool. So it's not the kind of thing you're going to use every day, but when you need it, boy, is it handy to have it, okay? So check it out. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.